Now, me personally, I'm heading the other way because whatever dragged you could drag me, and I'm sorry. Just know. Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so today, I really don't got nothing to tell y'all or ask y'all, and I ain't got no sponsorship, so we ain't doing none of that yet. So yeah, we just gonna go ahead and jump right into today's video. But before we get into the details, let me just give y'all a fair warning that today's case might piss y'all off because it pissed me off consistently throughout the research. So John Douglas White was born on May 20th, 1957 to his parents, and he was the oldest of two kids. And according to his sister, the two of them had a pretty good childhood. They had a stable household. They had two loving, doting, caring, just altogether good parents. While they weren't the richest people in the world, they definitely weren't poor either. So like I said, very normal childhood, nothing major to report there. And once John got older, things seemed to be going the same way. Nothing really big to report besides the fact that he decided to take up a career in the Navy. And while he was in the Navy, this is when I think he met his first wife. And I'm not sure the year that the two of them got married, but I know that in 1980, while he was still married to said wife, he and her were living somewhere. I don't even know where. I think it might have been in Michigan, but I'm not 100% sure because once again, he was in the Navy. He could have been living anywhere. Anyways, point being, while he was with his wife in 1980, they were living somewhere and they had this next door neighbor. She was 17 years old. Her name was Teresa Etherton. And at the time, John was 22. And I know that 17 and 22 sound like a big old age gap, but it's really not. It's just 5 years. Teresa literally could be his little sister or something like that. And apparently John and his wife were friends with Teresa. Now, I didn't read that nowhere, but I'm assuming that they had some type of friendly relationship because when John invited Teresa over to look at like a race car track type of thing that he had built in his basement, she accepted the invitation and she went over there. And so I couldn't see her doing that if she didn't really know them or she didn't really fool with them like that. So I'm just assuming that they were friends. But in any event, John invites Teresa over to his basement to check out this race car track. But once Teresa got down there, instead of seeing this race car track that John had told her about, she felt the cold blade of a knife stab her in her back. John proceeded to stab Teresa 15 times before the attack ended. Now, I've heard varying accounts of how the police were called. So one account was that John attacked Teresa and then he went upstairs, told his wife that Teresa tried to attack him and he had to defend himself and he, attacked her. And then another version that I heard was that somebody else was in the house and they heard Teresa screaming and they called the police. Whichever way it went, the police were called pretty much immediately after the attack, and John was taken to jail. Now, thankfully, Teresa survived this attack, and she would later on go on to say that while John was attacking her, he told her that he was sorry that she had to go like this, but what the fuck, she was just a woman. So because of this attack, John was charged with attempted murder and he was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. However, he would get out in just 2 years. Because 2 years into his sentence, he ended up appealing his case, stating that his lawyers failed to present an insanity defense, pretty much ineffective counsel. And he ended up winning this appeal and his sentence was overturned, but he was let out on 2 years probation. So he spent 2 years in jail for the attempted murder, got out on appeal, but then had to serve 2 years probation. Oh, and as a term of his release, he was also mandated to get mental health counseling, which I don't think he ever did though. Somebody should have followed up on that. So now John is out of jail and it's time for him to get a job. But he a felon now. Everybody ain't trying to hire no criminal. Or back then, was they doing background checks like that? I don't know. But nonetheless, he ended up being a long-haul truck driver. So that meant he drove all across the United States, here, there, and everywhere. And from the looks of things, John had seemed to turn his life around. He had a wife, they was having kids. Now, I don't know if this is the same wife from before or if that wife divorced him and he got remarried, but nonetheless, he had a wife and some kids now. And years would go by with John being a long haul truck driver before he eventually quit doing that job and started working at a textile company where he met a young woman named Vicki Sue Wall, who was also working at the textile company with him. Vicki was born on September 15th, 1967, making her just about 10 years younger than John. She's 26, John is 36, and he's looking at this beautiful young tenderoni, and he tries to pursue her. And it wouldn't be long before John was having an affair with Vicki. Now, I don't know how long their affair lasted, but what I do know is that on July 11th, 1994, Vicki would end up going missing. And once she went missing, police ended up finding a surveillance video of Vicki getting into a black pickup truck with a man who had a beard in a parking lot at around 3 o'clock in the morning. And that was the last known sighting of Vicki that they had. They never seen any surveillance video of her being dropped back off. She never turned up at home. She got into this truck and disappeared. So being that John and Vicki were having an affair, the police obviously questioned John about this, and he said that he didn't know what they was talking about. He didn't see Vicki that day. Yeah, they had an affair, but he didn't see her that day. But then they showed him the video. Now, I'm pretty sure y'all already know that the truck in the video was John's, and the police knew that also. And so they presented him with this evidence, and he was like, okay, well, yeah, I did see her, but when I left her, she was alive. Of course she was. And while they knew that that was his truck, they didn't really have any evidence to say that he did anything to her besides pick her up. So they had to let him go. But they would end up conducting a search on John's truck. And at first they didn't see nothing going on. There weren't any blood stains or anything like that. But once the luminol was put on there, they seen a couple of spots where it indicated that blood had been. However, it was 1994. DNA technology was in its infancy, and there just wasn't enough for them to be able to test the blood samples. But they did know that there had been blood in that truck, and they suspected that it was Vicki's. But again, they still couldn't arrest him. So while John is out here living his life with his pregnant wife and kids, Vicki's family was suffering trying to figure out what happened and where she could have gone. But just about 6 weeks after Vicki's disappearance, while a man was walking kind of near an area where Vicki was last seen, he came across 2 drag marks. Like, he just saw some drag marks. And for whatever reason, he decided to follow these drag marks. Now, me personally, I'm heading the other way because whatever dragged you could drag me, and I'm sorry. Just no. But luckily his curiosity got the best of him and he followed the drag marks. So as he's following the drag marks, he notices a white shoe and a pair of panties. And immediately after seeing those items, he got hit with the smell of decomposition and then seen a skull at the same time. And once he saw this skull, he hightailed it out of there. He ran to the nearest telephone and called the police. Now, this body was identified as Vicki Sue Wall. However, her body was so decomposed that the medical examiner couldn't get a cause of death, but the manner in which she was found in suggested homicide. And y'all already know the police had a very strong suspicion that John did it. And now that they found Vicki, John was actually arrested. But even though they had arrested him, they still didn't feel like they had enough solid evidence to convict him. They were still going to go to trial with the circumstantial evidence that they had, but they were just unsure if he would be convicted. However, John started feeling the heat and he felt like he wasn't going to make it at trial. So John's attorneys told the prosecution that he would plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter. And like I said, because the prosecutors only had circumstantial evidence, they decided to accept this deal. So that's what John did. He pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to the maximum of 8 to 15 years in prison. However, in 2007, John was released after serving just 12 years of his sentence. And I'm just like, how? Why? What the hell? Because he's already a repeat offender. He was trying to kill Teresa. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not like he stabbed her once and was like, oops, my bad, I slipped. He stabbed this young girl 15 times, altered the course of her life, left her for dead. Then he actually killed someone and is still being let out early? Make that make sense. because the very least he should have served his full 15 and not a day less. I don't understand this getting out early after multiple offenses here. But anyways, y'all, during John's 12-year sentence, a couple things happened. His wife divorced him, took the kids and peaced out on him, and he had found God and became a pastor. So once John was released, he was initially living with his sister, but eventually he found his own place in a trailer park in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And he eventually became the pastor at a small church. And when I say a small church, I mean like a really, really small church. There was no more than 14 members of this church, of his congregation. But nonetheless, the size of the congregation didn't matter. He was now a pastor and he was a reformed man. And it's at this church where he met a woman named Sally Gay, who he would eventually end up being engaged to. Now, when he went to this church, he told the congregation about his past. He told them, I don't really know what he told them. I think he lied, but he did tell them that he had been in prison. But I don't think he told them to the extent of his crimes. And so to Sally's knowledge, she knew about his past, but she was a good-hearted Christian woman and she believed in redemption, and she felt like John was a saved man now. He put his faith in God. He is a pastor. He was a changed man. And so Sally and John are in this relationship, and throughout the course of their relationship, John became close to Sally's 24-year-old daughter, Rebecca Gay. And that was really easy for him to do because him and Rebecca actually lived in the same trailer park. They was literally neighbors pretty much. And John would often help Rebecca out with her son, Conway. He was pretty much an instant granddad out here in these streets doing all the granddad things. And so on October 31st, 2012, that's exactly what John was doing. He was doing his whole granddad thing, and he went to Rebecca's house to pick up Conway because it was Halloween and Conway was going to spend the day with his dad. So John went over to Rebecca's and picked up Conway, put him in his Halloween costume, and then dropped him off to spend the day with his dad. And that just sounds so sweet and so cute until you realize that just hours before taking Conway to spend the day with his dad, John had actually murdered Rebecca. So it was the early hours of the morning. John was drunk and he went over to Rebecca's house to fulfill a fantasy, if you will. He had started having the sudden urge to commit necrophilia. He wanted to know what that was like. And so, like I said, he was drunk. He went over to Rebecca's, and when he saw her, he hit her with a rubber mallet until she passed out. And she didn't die right away, so he took some zip ties and he strangled her with them before maybe or maybe not having sexual relations with her body. I say maybe or maybe not because in his confession he said he don't remember if he did or not, but it's been proven that he did. And after he did this, he took Rebecca and dumped her in a ditch about a mile away from her home. And then later on that morning is when he picked up Conway. And then he pretty much just went on about his day. But when Rebecca didn't show up for work at the Goodwill, where she had just recently been promoted to manager, her coworkers started to worry about her because Rebecca was responsible. She loved her job and she would never just not show up. If she wasn't going to come, she was going to let somebody know that she wasn't going to be there so that they could plan accordingly. And by noon that day, Rebecca was reported missing. And pretty much everybody was looking for Rebecca. And her car was found not too far away from her house in like a bar parking lot. This was like a little bar. And you could actually see the bar and her car from her house. So when the police saw her car, they was like, why is it sitting here looking all crazy? Because it wasn't parked in a regular spot. It looked like it was trying to be hidden, but in plain sight. And so when the police found her car, they went into this bar and asked all the employees had they seen Rebecca, because she was a regular here. They knew what she looked like. They knew who she was. And everybody said no. And throughout this whole day while the search is going on for Rebecca, John is calling his congregation, telling them to pray for Rebecca, pray that she's found safe, yada, yada, yada. But almost immediately, police suspected John because they knew that he had a criminal past. And unlike his congregation, the police knew the whole truth about his past. And so they bring him in for questioning. And at first he tries to deny it. And what he said was that he went to Rebecca's house to pick up Conway, but Rebecca was in the shower. But she knew that he was supposed to be coming to get Conway. So he got Conway dressed and then took him to his dad. And he never saw Rebecca, but he knew she was in the shower. But the police pretty much knew that he was lying. And so they kept pressing him about it. And so eventually the next day on November 1st, John confessed to murdering Rebecca Gay. And he ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder as a habitual offender and was sentenced to 56 years. But very shortly after John was sent to prison on August 28, 2013, John had decided to exit this world voluntarily, and he was found in his cell no longer living. He was 55. And it's really unfortunate that he got so many chances in society. He got to live till he was 55. Meanwhile, he altered Teresa's life at 17 years old. He took Vicky's life when she was just 26 years old, and Rebecca was just 24. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Did this case piss you off like it pissed me off? Because it really had me over here hot. I was mad while I was researching this case. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for today's case. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Oh, and as a term of his release, he was also as terms of his and it wasn't long before he and Vicky started having an affair because, well, no, he was having an affair. I don't think Vicky was having the affair. You know what I mean? Is that how that go? I don't know. Can she be having an affair if she's not the one married? In a trailer park in where? Where was it at? Where was it at? Where was it at? He found his own place in a trailer park and he found his own place in a trailer park in Mount where? Damn it. Okay.